Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Gosh,
Hi,
what a
everyone.
treat.
Hello, everyone.
Friends old and new. How nice. Hi, Claire. Nice to see you. Hi, Victoria.
Hi.
Hi, Victoria.
Fantastic. Hi,
Hi,
Lucy.
Roberta. How
Hi,
you doing?
Jessie. Sarah, hi. Roberta, nice to see you.
Hiya.
Thea, you were the first person here. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Charlotte, nice to see you as well. Rose, we know you're here, but we can't see your smiling face yet. Okay. Hi, Rose. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Oh, Gabby's here. That's great. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Hi, I'm Julia. Welcome. We want to get started. We've got tons to do. I'm going to speak fast. It's going to be a really energetic session. And this is how it starts. Can you see your chat option? If you hover at the bottom of your screen, you'll have the chat option there. Make sure it's set so that it speaks to everyone. So I am saying hi to you. Did you see that? Give me a thumbs up. Thank you, thanks, Jessie. Thanks, Anthea. Okay, there's lots of thumbs and lots of waving on Zoom, nothing to do. So, if you could please introduce yourselves to the group by telling us your name, what kind of a student you are or were, and whether or not you've ever had a tutor. So these are our warm-up questions that we use in our podcast. Victoria, you know that. So we would like to hear what kind of a student you were or are, and whether or not you've ever had a tutor, and your name, of course. Off you go.
Hi, Paddy. How you doing? Can you hear us? Pads, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello, mate. How's it
Rebecca's
going?
struggling, Ludo. Are you able to help her?
Yes.
Thank you.
So some of you we know a mixture of course alumni, friends and colleagues
I'm Julia.
along the way.
I was an enthusiastic student. You won't be surprised to hear. Thanks, Victoria.
That was supposed to be like the whole thing, but it just...
I know it does that.
Oh, well, we'll get the rest of it in a minute.
And yes, I did. Yes, I did, 11 plus. And she was lovely, Mrs. Fisher.
So do read the other ones as they come through as well.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Jessie. You are a curious student, and you remember to ask your teachers their advice with teaching, which was so impressive. I loved that point in your pod. Okay, fantastic. GCSE English, right, because you're a science person. Flippant. Roberta, nice to see you. Fantastic. Enthusiastic is my key word. What is an unmemorable tutor? How would you know?
Well, that's the thing, because if you can't remember having a tutor, if you had one, they weren't memorable enough to remember. So.
You're not sure that you didn't have a tutor, you're just sure that you didn't have a memorable tutor.
I'm pretty sure I didn't have a tutor, but I'm covering all bases.
Evie, nice to see you.
You
we are filling up the chat boxes with introductions right now. We are answering what is our name, what kind of a student we are or were, and whether or not we ever had a tutor.
Okay. I'm going to do that now.
Female heavy group. Paddy, we're really happy that you're here to represent.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you.
Right.
Because joining us. So for those of you who've been on, who've been taking this course, either in the first cohort we had or the second cohort we had, you'll know how Zoom works by now. I'm sure most of the rest of you have been using Zoom, even if you haven't been on this course, because everyone uses Zoom. So we will be making use of the chat box on the right-hand side throughout the next hour and a half, and we will try and keep it to an hour and a half. We do respect the fact that all of you have Wednesday evenings, but there will be, the main content delivery will be coming from the wonderful Julia Silva, founder of Qualified Tutor, and we also have Adrian Conway, who is a very experienced course facilitator, both for teachers and now for tutors. So do listen, but also please share. This is very much an interactive session. I know that course alumni such as Victoria and Rose and Camilla and Claire, there's been so much contribution so far in the past two cohorts. So please do take their lead, but if at any point you find that your experience in tutoring would add to the conversation, please don't hesitate to join in. But also wonderfully, we have 2 cohorts here. So for those who are in the first cohort we had, that's Ellie and Victoria and Evie, please, there are a mixture of, as we were saying, there's a combination of other course alumni from our second cohort. That's Camilla and Lucy, and please, this is a brilliant time for our cohorts to meet. And also for those,
we have one cohort 3 person here.
We do.
That's Jessie. She's ready to start in a couple of weeks' time, so that's really exciting. So the order of events is going to be, firstly, we are going to do a very special thing, which is we are going to give you, the people who have finished the course are going to get their certificates by the end of the evening. Totally exciting, and Adrian's going to do that. And then I'm going to deliver the How to Smash session. So Adrian, straight over to you, please. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's quite an important point that we're at in the journey of qualified tutor. And in your journey as well, of course, because it's a journey that some of you are coming to an end and some of you are just starting. So it's very exciting for everybody. But really, in many ways, we're all at the beginning of a journey anyway. So we've got lots of things that we need to do and things that we need to move forward with. So one of the things that I just want to do before we start the session is I just want to just thank Julia, actually, because what happened was that Julia came to me with a suggestion, and this suggestion was I was a little bit cynical about it. I wasn't sure about, qualified tutor. I don't know. It was one of those things that I could see it, but I couldn't really sort of recognize it at the moment. And Julia persuaded me, and I think it's been the most fantastic idea. So I think we've just got to say a big thank you to Julia, because it's essentially her dream. This is something that she's been working towards for quite a considerable amount of time. But more than that, Julia saw an absolute gap in the market, because the tutoring industry, which is a big industry, and it's going to get bigger, is effectively in many ways unregulated. Anyone can be a tutor, not anyone can be a qualified tutor. So there's a big difference. Over the last few weeks, some of you have had around 10 or more hours of learning, and you've been engaging with the Slack channel. And really 10 hours of learning puts you in a really, really good position. You will have heard in the national media about the tutoring programme that's going to happen nationally. I think it was about £350 million that the government are intending to invest in this, as a result of the COVID-19. And you're in a fantastic position, all of you are in a fantastic position to take this forward. There's going to be some fantastic opportunities for you. And we're very proud that we've actually started you off on that journey of being qualified. So during the journey, what we've covered is we've looked at safeguarding, we've looked at relationships, we've looked at learning and teaching strategies, with the learning loop at the centre of it. And I think Julie is going to look a little bit more detail at that today. We've looked at special educational needs and disabilities, mental health and well-being. And all those things are absolutely key, but the journey doesn't stop there. You never stop learning. It's a lifelong journey that you're embarking on. And we seriously hope that you will continue to work with us, that you will grow with us, and develop with us. And I think I need to give you a special thank you, because I've been working with many of you for quite a few weeks now. And one of the things that has really struck me is that your professionalism and the way that you go about working with each other. You're so giving, you're very open and honest, and you give your views freely. And I think that really has created a fantastic culture of sharing ideas. So I think as this journey continues, we hope that you are going to continue the journey with us. We've got a lot more to offer. We've got lots of ideas. Julia has got a book full of ideas that we're going to implement, and we hope that you will pick up on some of those and work with us on that. And I just want to say that the people who've now qualified, a massive congratulations. It is really a significant achievement.
Ludo, can we show the certificate?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And we're going to choose on our someone who's been here right from the start, our very own Dan, who's just joined us actually. So these are the wonderful certificates.
Just in time, Dan. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well done. Excellent.
So
and I just want to leave you with a little quote, and it really, you know, what we've done over the last few weeks is really scratched the surface. We've you know, gone into some really important areas, but there's so much more that we've got to offer you. So I want to leave you with a quote, and there will be a bonus point for anyone who works out who said this quote. It's better a little which is well done than a great deal imperfectly. Who said that? Have we got any philosophers? It was Plato. Okay, so we've done a little, but we've done it well, and we've got more to give. Well done, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Adrian. I'm going to take it over from here. So we're talking about beginnings. And so it's a very good time to talk about the beginnings of starting with a new student. And so I'm going to share with you this model for a first tutoring session, which would also work well in further sessions. You probably wouldn't do it every time, but you may well do it repeatedly with the same student, but it will definitely work the first time. Ludo, could you just go back to the title for a second?
Yes, of course.
How to Smash is a very energetic title, but it's actually really specific, because when I come out of a tutoring session, especially with remote tutoring, because I find it really energizing, and my family say to me, how was that session? I honestly say to them, I smashed it. Because there's something that you get from teaching, there is feedback that you get from teaching that you don't get from any other job. Teaching and tutoring is a really, really fulfilling job, because the feedback is so immediate. You see on the student's face whether or not they got it. You see in the smile on their face, and you see in their response. So you get that immediate feedback that you don't get from any other job. And so if you are clear what your objectives were, and you see by the end of the session that you achieved those objectives, you smashed it. And that's probably a really, really enjoyable feeling. So what are the learning objectives for a first session? And what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to do, this is a very layered course, because I'm actually following the 5-step plan in this course. So the first part of the first 5-step plan is to set the goals. And the learning objectives here, because what will you want to do in your first session? You'll want to assess where your students are up to, their current knowledge and their current skills. And you'll want to make sure that they want to come back for the next session, so you can actually make a difference for them. So there's 2 things that you want to be achieving here. You want to be achieving assessment, and you want to be achieving engagement. And so the learning outcome that we are offering to you at the end of this session, this is the goal setting element, is you will walk away from this 90-minute session with an easy to use, totally adaptable plan to ensure a successful first session with any student of any age in any subject. That is a big concrete goal that I've just given you. Now, if you are new to Qualified Tutor, the way that we run our sessions is we deliver some content which is rich and deep and powerful, and then we give you a breakout session for you to digest it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sow seeds of ideas, and then you'll get a chance to bounce the ideas off other tutors to reflect on it later. So Ludo, if you'll turn the page, please.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the plan. Goal. And I've just set our goal, haven't I? To give you a takeaway that you can make use of in every session, in every new session. Then we're going to model. And modeling means you show them what success looks like, which is a very powerful thing that we often forget to do. We leave our students in the dark, expecting them to follow us step by step forward through the lesson. Whereas if we showed them what the end point would be, they would have so much more agency over their learning. It's the difference between baking using a recipe book where each recipe has a photo of what you're supposed to finish up with, to one that doesn't. And I know that I always feel much more orientated in my cooking if I have an outcome photo. So, you know, the British Bake Off has a picture for every recipe, not for no reason. It's giving you a model. And then you've got a scaffold. And a scaffold is your step-by-step guide to how to get there. And a scaffold is a really profound idea in teaching and learning, because what it's saying is that the teacher can help you build up from where you are at the moment to your next level. And then you'll build those foundations so that the next time your tutor has to scaffold you, they'll scaffold you a level further up. So if you think about, for those of us who have already done the course, we talked about the trust bridge. So the scaffold is helping you to take those, helping your student to take those steps forward in a trustful space. Create is sort of the point of this 5-step plan. When I asked myself the question, what does a first session need to have to make a student feel like it was a worthwhile session? I decided that it needed to have a thing that the student made, something that didn't exist before. And then that last bit, publish, is what takes it to the next level. All you need to do is WhatsApp a picture of the work to the student's parents for it to amplify the meaning of the learning. And if you think about how disheartening it is for a student to fill in a sheet and then see it going in the bin at the end of the session. I worked with a teacher once who used to say, I'll file it under B, because everything ended up in the bin. And there's a reality, because students make so much stuff, there's so much content that they create, and that's part of their learning process. But if you can amplify the value by sharing it with people, you are making them feel more value in their learning. So, on to the next page. We always start with assessing, because if you shoot too high, you make your student feel wobbly. And if you shoot too low, you leave your student bored and disenfranchised. So you need to find the right pitch. And tutoring is all about finding the right pitch. There's no excuse for not understanding exactly where your student is when there's only one of them. So that's your job as a tutor, is to find where they're up to. So Dylan Williams, who does a lot of work about assessment for learning, says you must start from where your students are and not from where you would like them to be. So leave all your assumptions at the door and really notice and really listen. And the beauty of working one-to-one with a student is you can basically read their minds. That's the job. You can see where the misconceptions are. You can see where they've taken a leap in their learning in that one moment. And that's really, really, it's sort of your key information. So if you'll turn the page, please, Ludo, because I'm speaking fast. You need, in order to be able to assess your student, you need to give them the kind of activity that will show off lots of their skills. A rich activity that is open-ended enough for them to show you what they can really do. Because if it's a closed activity, they could have done much more and you never gave them the chance to show you. And an activity that has enough elements to it that you can really, really find out where the strengths and weaknesses are. And I'll show you more about that in a second. So the next element will be to think about engagement, because as I said, this part of the workshop is our goal setting. And our goals for this first session are two things. They are assessment and they are engagement. Assessment is in order to find out where the student is, and it'll be a rich activity to help you find that knowledge out. And engagement is so that they come back next time. And teachers have an advantage. The student has to come back again next week, tomorrow, next lesson. Tutors don't have that advantage. And if you don't create engagement in session 1, you may not have a chance to put your assessment into practice. So you want to make sure that the student feels like the work was meaningful, exciting, and enjoyable. So I've put it into 2 elements. I think achievement is undervalued in teaching and learning. We always think about progress and moving them forward and inching forward, but there's something lovely about having a thing that you've made that you hadn't made before, or you didn't know how to make before. And if you can give them that sense of achievement, that's a really, really motivating thing. It's a really intrinsic motivation. And enjoyment, well, we talk in Qualified Tutor about fun and friendly. And And creating a space for enjoyment is really, really important. So I actually used the 5-step plan today. I was tutoring an 8-year-old. She's actually just turning 8, and I'll tell you how I know that. And she's in a bit of a blue funk at the moment because of isolation. And I haven't seen her for a month or two. And her mother just said she just needed some positivity. So what I did was, on Zoom, I also set up a Google Doc. And on this Google Doc, I told her that it's party time and we're going to plan a party. And she got to decide what party we were planning and who to invite and what the decorations would be and the activities and all of that. We made invitations, we learned lots of different computer skills, and she had a smile from ear to ear. And it was all pink and purple, and she came out with invitations for all the members of her family to come to her birthday on 23rd of October. So it's good that we started nice and early, because next week what we're going to do is we're going to do some budgeting work around what ingredients we need for the party. So this time we did some writing and creating, and the next time we'll extend it into maths with some budgeting. So that was really, really enjoyable for her and lifted her spirits without me having to step into the therapist mode, which I refuse to do. It's not my skill. So I made the learning help her. So on to the next page, Ludo. And what you'll see here is we're going to step on from goal setting and into modeling. And this is where we're getting quite meta, because this is a model of our model. Because what I'm showing you here is that this is what we're working towards by the end of this session. We're going to teach you how to think about the activity, the timings, preparing the resources, and what your assessment opportunities, crucially, will be. So those are our rows going down, and the columns, which I've already shown you, were set your goal, give them a model, which is your success criteria, scaffold them there, create something, and share it with somebody so that it feels meaningful. So that's the model of our goal setting. On the next page, you'll see the model for our model. And that looks like this. So this lesson is going to be, the session is going to be to write, the goal is going to be to write a humorous letter from the Tooth Fairy to Father Christmas. And so the first thing I'm going to do, why did I choose that? Well, letter writing gives them a chance to show me how they write. Reading the model letter first is going to let me see how they read, not just decoding, but also inference. Then I'm going to see their spelling abilities, their grammar, writing, their attitude for learning. And when we get to the create element, I'm going to see how confident they are to use their imagination and how motivated they are to get to the end of the activity. My timings are quite realistic. I've given the weight of the timings to the scaffold of the create, and I'm going to use that time to really explore what the student can do. And I have quite an open mind in terms of, is this going to be a 3-sentence letter or a 3-paragraph letter? So if you go on to the next page, you'll see the letter to Father Christmas. Dear Tooth Fairy, I hope that you are very well and that your wings have recovered from that horrible accident with the electric toothbrush last winter. So this is a lovely, humorous letter where there's lots of inference opportunities here. Mother sends her love. She's recovering from a nasty cold. Lucky the helpers started early this year, so we should have everything in ready in time. You know I don't like to complain, but people just don't make the effort they used to. Rarely do I get a brandy or a pudding left out of the mantelpiece these days. And who is this Mr. Argos? He seems to get there before me time and again. Do you think I should report him to the union? So it's funny, it's light, and there's tons of nuance there. So you'll be able to find out what level of understanding your student is on. So this is a pitch. You could reuse this letter with a 6-year-old or with a 12-year-old. Because there's space within this for you to unpick the student's understanding. Also, don't forget their context. So do they know about Father Christmas? Do they know about the Tooth Fairy? Do they know about reindeer? Do they know about coughs and colds? There's lots of different things that you can pull on here to find out about their background knowledge. And for those of us who will be responding to the national tutoring It wasn't written by me, it was written by Father Christmas, Ludo. For those of us who will be making use of the National Tutoring Programme, you may well find yourself working with students who are lacking in basic general knowledge. The phrase that they use at the moment is cultural capital, because there is a power in knowing the key terms in our culture. And so Ellie actually was sharing with me recently that he was working with students who didn't know what it was to bleat, and they didn't know which animal bleats, and they barely knew what a sheep was. And working through that process with them made him understand how many steps back, because I'm speaking for you, Ellie, please forgive me, made him understand how many steps back he needed to go in order to fill in those gaps to take those students further, which is a constant push-pull you'll have when you're working with these, specifically with these children who will be lacking that input. So that's the model. If you could go on to the next page, Ludo, we'll show you the scaffold. So in the model, we've had the opportunity to watch the student reading. In the scaffold, we're going to help them to start writing. So now they're writing their reply written by the Tooth Fairy to Father Christmas. So because my letter from Father Christmas started with a friendly inquiry, this one is going to do the same. It doesn't have to be. There's not just one right way of writing a humorous letter, but it helps the student if I parallel the scaffold to the model. So I've started with a friendly inquiry, then I've asked for some recent news, then I've asked for an observation or a complaint, that was Mr. Argos. Then why it's time to stop writing? Well, Father Christmas had a steak and kidney pie coming out of the oven. So why is the Tooth Fairy starting, got to go? That would be an interesting thing. Calls to action, something like please write again, and the sign off. So it's a straightforward letter structure. And by asking the student just to fill in those lines, especially when you're giving them cues about how many lines this is probably going to take, they're going to have put together quite a clear plan. Now, they don't have to write, and it would be better if they didn't write full sentences here. It would be better if they only wrote the key points, if they only wrote the notes, because otherwise they're going to run out of stamina when it comes to the create element. Now, if your student didn't have the maturity to be able to hold back, what you would do would be you would amalgamate the two elements and you would let the scaffold actually become the letter. Because certainly with young children, they don't have the stamina to write the whole thing out twice. So either you take notes for them and help them with the scaffold and you leave them to create, or you just let the scaffold become the letter. And publish, as you can see in this case, is a note on the fridge. Because everyone in the family is going to walk past that piece of writing and notice it and notice some good ideas in there and say well done to that child. That child feels like a winner and they want to meet with you again next week when you can really start implementing the things that you've discovered whilst you are watching them work. Capital letters and full stops, struggles with handwriting, doesn't have any fresh ideas, needs a word bank. All of those things are things that you'll discover here in the scaffold element. So I've just modeled to you the 5 steps of the 5-step plan. It's very meta. So Ludo, if you could go on, please. I think I get to take a break in a minute and let you guys have a go. So go ahead, Ludo, if you'll explain the breakout, please. And we've got a whole nother level of Zoom. Adrian came up with this amazing way to share documents with you in Zoom because we can't do those in breakouts recently until now. So we're going to try this out on you now. Off you go.
So, brilliant. Julia, you're allowed to take a break there. That is an excellent run through of how we are going to model this session. Perhaps model is the wrong word. How we are going to show you this session through a 5-step plan. So Julia has very kindly and very accurately talked us through the goal, model, scaffold, create and publish, the 5-step plan that we are working on for the first session. In this breakout session, and again, for those who have done the qualification for tutors course with us, you will know, and I hope love, the breakout sessions. For those who either haven't used them so far, or for those who have never used Zoom before, they are a wonderful time for you to digest the material that we have been delivering to you with the other participants. So we'll give you ample time in the breakout sessions. We'll give you very close to 10 minutes to discuss this 5-step plan for writing a letter from Santa to the Tooth Fairy. So we'd like you to discuss two things in your breakout sessions. It will become clearer when I have finished sending out the Google Sheets, the Google Docs that you will be working on in your breakout sessions. So let me just show you quickly what I am talking about. Before I send you off into your breakout rooms, let me just show you what I am talking about. So in your breakout sessions, I will already have sent you on the chat. I'll be doing that in a second. So there are 4 breakout rooms and there are 4 of you in each breakout room. So we have, each breakout room will be working on its own canvas. We're calling it a canvas. So this is something that you guys can work on in your breakout rooms. So we have the goal, we have the model, we have the scaffold, the create, the publish, that which Julia has just been through. And we would like you to discuss the assessment and the engagement opportunities in this 5-step plan. So where can you assess the student in this 5-step plan, and how can you create engagement within this 5-step plan? So, Julia, if you'd just like to explain the plan a little more briefly about the shoots.
So I want you to pick apart this plan. I want you to say what works. I want you to say how to improve it. In the second breakout, there's only 2 breakouts in this session. In the second breakout, we're going to give you time to work in smaller groups, and you will be filling in one of these yourself. So we're going to give you 4 examples of students in the second breakout. You'll choose one, and you'll make one of these plans yourself. So this is our example, because this is the end of our model element of the breakout of the workshop. So we're modeling to you how this plan works, and it's useful to have a chance to pick it apart. So it's the kind of thing that you would do very much in a session where, you know, if somebody gave you a poem, you would analyze it and pick it apart. That's the activity that's going to happen now. So this massive breakthrough that we've had in our tech right now is that what Ludo's going to do is he's going to send you a link in the chat. So everybody is going to get their own link. And Google Docs are amazing because they are online. So this is, if you're not familiar, Google Doc is exactly like a Word document, but instead of living on your computer, it lives online, and so it can be shared. So all of you in your group can be looking at the same thing together, and you can be populating it because this is an editable document. So you can start filling in the assessment opportunities over here and taking notes and making use of it. Ludo, you ready to go? Everyone's ready to start?
I can see everyone's ready. I'm almost there. If we all did a big countdown from 5 to 0, then I would.
You want us to start a bit higher?
No, if you count up to 5, I'll have you away in your room. So 5, 4, 3, 2,
just
1.
Press on the link that comes up in your chat, and it will open the document for you.
I would just like to say, have you all opened that up now? We'd love to go thumbs up for if you are happy, because once you've left the main.
Thank you, Camilla. Great, Roberta's got it. Jessie's with us, Victoria's with us. Paddy, are you with us? Rebecca's got it, Ellie's got it. Evie, you got it? Rose has got her thumb up in the corner there, fantastic.
Wonderful.
Dan, you got it? Brilliant. Claire, are you with us? Excellent, lovely. Who didn't we hear from? Charlotte, we didn't hear from you.
All good?
It says I need to request access or something.
Okay.
Wrong setting. Okay, very good.
Okay. I will, you are in, Charlotte, you're in breakout room 2. Okay, I will sort that for you. Is anyone else getting that message?
Should be everyone in breakout room 2, no?
Okay, just Charlotte. Okay, I'll sort that for you as soon as the breakout rooms are opened, Charlotte. Okay. So if you haven't used breakout rooms before, a message will pop up on your screen. Just click join room, and then when we're ready to bring you back in, a timer will count down from 60 seconds. Just wait for that timer to count down to 0, and you'll be automatically brought back into the main room where we'll feedback all of your ideas. Okay, great stuff. See you in just under 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. Hello.
Welcome back.
Doesn't 10 minutes fly? Very quick.
Insane.
So we're just going to take a little bit of feedback. We're not going to spend too long because it's one of those things that actually you'll probably go away and you'll you'll process it and compute it and think about it. But has anyone got any thoughts about the breakout that you just had, the activity that you just had there? Just take a couple of points.
Yeah, I'll jump straight in.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah.
It was super collaborative. The conversation was flowing right from the start, I found, in my group. So I really enjoyed that aspect.
Good.
Good. Yeah, I was to say we're sort of doing meta stuff here because I really enjoyed that we could actually write on the Google Doc. That was very, very handy. But my only comment would be, it was too short. We only did half of it. We need more time.
Absolutely. It's just a taste of Victoria, really. It's just to get you thinking, really. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason why you can't. If it was useful, why you can't get together beyond, outside of the course and work collaboratively on that document. Any other pointers?
I'll jump in again, if that's all right.
Good man, Dan.
Everyone from my group participated, and that's what I really enjoyed. No one was left out.
Yeah.
Everyone in my group had different ages and experiences, and they all kind of had their input. So that was nice.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. Having loads of different experience levels in there is cool, because everyone has, people have done this kind of thing before, and others have literally never done it. So you learn from each other. It's nice. It's fun.
Julia, there's a note to self there that we need to look at ways that we can set up collaborative learning with people, putting people in touch to work together. It's very powerful. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the feedback, guys. Okay, Julia?
Okay, so the reason why we didn't spend too long on the feedback is because you know what you've been saying. And what we'd rather do is share with you more good content for you to continue to chew on. So this is the scaffold element of the 5-step plan. Thank you. So the reason why I'm pointing that out to you is because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain each of those 5 steps and why they're meaningful. I'm going to explain goal, then I'm going to explain model, then I'm going to explain scaffold, and then create, and then publish. And then you're going to get a chance to create your own 5-step plan. So the goal over here of setting an ambitious, achievable, concrete goal that will give you ample opportunity for assessment could be all sorts of things. So what could we be setting as a goal over here? Well, we could write a poem together. We could perform a poem together. We could write a letter. We could do a scientific diagram. We could do a painting that represented a series of concepts that we were covering together. We could write an essay. We could even do a past paper. Anything that comes out with an outcome. And not all learning sessions come out with an outcome. And so you'll always have an objective, but you may well not have a finished piece. And what we want out of this 5-step plan is for you to choose a finished piece, which is realistic within the time given. So tutors will struggle with various points. And one of the things that you may well struggle with is understanding how much time things take. And that's a thing that you'll learn with time, but it's really useful to factor in that you're in control of how long you take, but you can't manage how long the student takes. And you have to give them the time and the space to think. So when you're planning your session, give them more time than you give yourself, because that's where their thinking and their process is going to happen. So talking about process, this phrase, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. Well, that really takes it to the next level in terms of understanding the learning process and the power of actually engaging your student effectively. So the next step was model. And the phrase that I've got for you from model, I can only accredit to my dentist, because he has a hand-drawn poster on his wall that says, you don't have to brush all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep. So I have appropriated that phrase and used it for models. You don't have to model everything, just the things you want your student to do well. And well is the key term there. Our goal over here is for them to have an outcome that is worthy of publishing. So whatever you're going to set them to do has to be able to be wrapped up within the time with a nice bow on top. So be really realistic with what your outcome's going to be, because you have to get there. And it has to be clear what success looks like. So a letter has to look like a letter in a letter format. Or the diagram, you know, show them what the equivalent would look like if it was, you know, the process of photosynthesis or the circulatory system. Show them an equivalent so that when they go ahead and create it, they have a picture in their mind of what they're comparing to. So if you remember again that that metaphor of baking a cake, and how much more likely you are to end up with the right kind of cake if you have an endpoint photo. So then to look at scaffolding for a second, and these two things go hand in hand when you're working with children, because in both cases what you're doing is you're giving them the support to get where you need them to go. So the scaffold quote is a really powerful one, and Vygotsky is a very foundational thinker in teaching and learning. And he says, what a child can do today with assistance, she will be able to do by herself tomorrow. And you can understand then why we've chosen a picture of a child riding with stabilizers, because the amazing thing about stabilizers is they're only useful when you need them. And you could actually ride your bicycle with stabilizers, but only use the two wheels. As soon as the child finds her balance, she won't need the stabilizers anymore. She won't even notice if you take them off. And that's what a scaffold will be. It will be a framework. So think back to the model of, to the scaffold of writing from the Tooth Fairy back to Father Christmas. And it will have spaces for the student to fill in. So I've given you a list of some kinds of scaffolds over here. And again, you know, Ellie, that was a very specific level of enthusiasm for Vygotsky over there. So what we've got over here is some suggestions, but we always say in Qualified Tutor there's no one right way. As long as you are responding to your student, there's lots and lots of ways of being successful and smashing this session. So some examples of scaffolds would be a word bank, a storyboard, step by step by step by step, a half-filled diagram or formula where the student only has to fill in the other elements. So what you're doing is you're easing them through the thinking. And in the same way, if you look at that last one on the list, the leading questions, you know, you'll very often talk with a student and you'll leave a gap or sentence for them to fill in. You are being the fill-in sheet, aren't you? Because what you're doing is you're scaffolding their learning so that they didn't know that they knew that, but now that you've given them the context, they've placed it. So they've done the work, but they haven't done all the work. And that's going to be one of the key elements in a scaffold. The other key element in a scaffold is that you're going to create an independent learner by removing the scaffold at the next step. So for example, the essay writing template, you'll show them what the introduction should have, what the main paragraphs should have, what the conclusion should have. But when you move on to the create element, you will lift that scaffold away and you'll give them a blank piece of paper for them to write their own essay. And when they feel and they see that that's what they've done, that's where the real pleasure comes from and the sense of achievement. So if you'll go on to the next slide, Ludo, we'll talk for a second about creating. So creating decorated boxes that you can hide in is always a good thing to do, possibly not a full hour session in a tutoring session, unless you decide that you're going on a fantastic adventure with the box, which would be fantastic. So the essence of creativity is figuring out how to use what you already know in order to go beyond that. So creating is always about going beyond. And that's the thing that I want to point you to here. And that's where the real feeling of enjoyment and achievement comes from. It's that feeling that a thing didn't exist, and by the end of the session, it does. And pushing your student just that little bit further than they intended to go in your session gives them a real sense of confidence. And the phrase is self-efficacy, which is Maslow's highest level of need. People need to feel like winners. And when somebody gets a chance to create something and then to publish it, you leave them feeling like a winner. There's a really powerful piece of psychology there. So some examples of the things your students can create, and we discussed this in our goal setting, would be a poem, a solution, a diagram, a performance, a painting, an essay. And you'll see, Ludo, if you'll go onto the publish page, you'll see how there's a parallel here between the create and the publish. So WhatsApping the piece of work to the parents or sticking it up on the fridge, posting it on Twitter. If you're posting anything on social media, just make sure you're only posting the piece of work and make sure that there's no name on it. You are allowed to share wonderful pieces of work. You're not allowed to share people's personal data. So, you know, teachers completely geek out on Twitter all day long. But what they do is they show what the child did. They just don't show who the child was. So please, you know, keep that in mind. Check out Pobble, which is a fantastic place to publish children's work. It's a shared space. Post it to a real recipient. So if you were writing a letter, write a letter to grandma and post it to her. And when the student gets a phone call 2 days later and said, thank you for that, Ellie. When your student says, my grandma got the letter and she sent me the sweets that I asked for, that takes the meaning of your learning to another level. Because, again, students don't always see the purpose in their learning. Because we're all very immediate creatures, but how much more so when we're children and we don't have the power of hindsight and the idea of investing in our future. And so if you can give them a sense of meaning in the learning and the work they've done today, you motivate them for next time. That's a powerful piece of motivation. And performing it to a live audience, or also, you know, recording it, not on your phone, possibly on theirs, and sharing it with their parents would also be fine. So this is where you get to do the work again. And this is going to be a longer breakout. We've said 10 minutes, but I've spoken fast so we can give you longer. We'll ask you in pairs this time. Ludo, do you want to start posting the links now as I describe it?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So we're going to put you in pairs or threes this time because we really want everybody to pitch in with the work. Choose a student. We've come up with a 7-year-old English student, 11-year-old math student, 14-year-old biology, 17-year-old French student. If you wanted to do something else, that would be fine too. It just helps us to give you some parameters. You are going to come up with a 5-step plan for your first session. Don't forget, your 2 objectives are to give yourself a rich activity where you can assess all the different skills that you need to see them doing. And you want to create engagement. So it needs to be an achievable goal and an enjoyable goal. So we're going to send you off into those groups now. These are different links, really important to note. These are different links because number 1, it's blank. And number 2, because you're working in smaller groups. We really wanted to give you the chance to pitch in further this time. So are we ready to go, Ludo?
This one will need maybe a little bit more than 5 seconds. But yeah, we will give you more time as Julia said in this one, because Julia has done something that I don't think we've ever done before in one of these Zoom workshops, which is actually be a little bit ahead of time. We always have such wonderful feedback from our breakout rooms and so much content to discuss that we always end up going a little bit over. But this time we have worked hard to give you the extra time to digest the material and come up with your own 5-step plans. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We will see you back here in 10 minutes.
Enjoy your trip.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion, a little bit of feedback, and what we're going to do is talk through the plans that you've got, and we're going to ask Ludo if we can share the screen. so we can actually have a look at those plans. And what we'd like you to do is talk us through it, and explain, more importantly, explain why you chose that particular one, because that's the thing that will be of interest to us. Okay.
Okay. So breakout room 1 had Alethea and Claire. Would you mind, see, this doesn't necessarily have to be completely filled in, that's not a problem at all, but would you mind taking us through kind of...
Talk us through what your thinking was, and maybe the parts that you didn't quite get to as well, if you've got ideas about that. But if you haven't,
in hindsight, I don't think it's actually the best, but this was just kind of the first thing that came to my head, remembering from school. And I was thinking sort of GCSE biology, creating, like, that's quite a nice publishable thing to create, like a scientific diagram of something. And at the different stage, I think the most important stage was the scaffold bit, and that's so that you could do kind of, they have match a sort of label with the component on the diagram, and that's a good way for you to assess where they're at. And then by the end, then the way you'll assess it is if they then now can successfully match all the components. And then they would have also created a really great revision material that they can put on their wall, and stuff like that. But I don't know.
That's quite nice, isn't it? Because it's a double whammy, because they actually, they get to create something as well as the process of learning, so that they've got something they can take away, which is quite a nice idea, isn't it? Very clever, very clever. Anything else you want to add about that one? Yeah?
I just thought maybe it was slightly boring, because if you're looking at a model of a diagram, and then you're creating, like, using the scaffold bit to create it, and then you're creating it own, you might just get quite bored of looking at the same diagram of a heart. So I thought maybe there were some limitations to this exact example, but
yeah, absolutely, that's great. Yep, thank you very much. Okay, next breakout room. So who was in this one?
That would be Rebecca and Rose. What did you guys?
Okay.
So we looked at teaching maths, because that's Rebecca's favourite subject at the moment. So we thought this would probably be 11 or maybe younger maths, because we were just doing simple division. And Rebecca had a really good idea of using counters. So we had like a visual stimulus, and we could, as a model, divide them up into pretending we're giving them to people, and maybe if they're really young, we can give them into like their favorite toys. We can say Teddy has 3, and just to keep them engaged.
Yeah, nice.
And then so once we've done that, we can maybe do the same thing, but then ask them what the division sum actually is. So we can divide the counters and say, so how many have we given to each person? And then, so that was part of the scaffold. And obviously also we can use half-filled equations if we want to do some more concrete writing of the sums. But then we thought that it would be a good idea for them to create some kind of poster that would explain to another student how to divide, because we thought that a way of really knowing if students understood something is if they can explain it back to you. And it also makes them feel much more confident, because they really know that they've learned something, and that's something they can maybe present to their family or their siblings or something. And I think that would boost their confidence.
That's great. That's brilliant. The one of the really important things is about it's very different to have knowledge and understand something. It's very different to actually teaching somebody else. So you could actually, sort of flip that and actually get them to teach you, in reverse. They were quite nice. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you very much. Okay, next breakout room.
So this would be Ellie and Jessie. What did you guys come up with here?
Something really quite similar. So I'm teaching fractions to an 11-year-old math student. And we thought kind of like the similar idea of a visual stimulus. So showing them a ready-made poster of someone thinking through the concept of fractions and non-whole numbers, and the idea to split something in half, and show them that they probably already know what a fraction is. Like they say half an hour, they say half a cake. So it kind of gives them that confidence already. And Ellie had obviously the great idea of bringing an actual cake in a non-COVID world. But you know, food always lures, which is great.
Cake, was it, Ellie?
And yeah, I guess with the with the scaffolding part, seeing how much they cling to it, and when they make their own poster, seeing whether they have a more abstract grasp on the idea of fraction. So if they decide to use it in terms of time or in terms of a pizza, then you kind of understand their level of understanding, and just whether you want to kind of jump back to the model or dive straight into it. And then, yeah, and like the previous group, is something nice to have on your bedroom wall or a fridge, or to show your parents, because, you know, colors can always get involved, which is nice.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, lovely idea, thank you. Okay, so this fourth one, this looks absolutely wonderful. This was Camilla and Victoria. What did you guys come up with here?
Well, we were sort of discussing English for a 7-year-old, and Camilla had some excellent ideas about how to sort of get them to start writing first chapters for stories, and you know, modelling, like using Harry Potter and then using the theme of sort of wizardry and magic, and creating the first page of your own story from the back of that. But we thought maybe for a first tutoring lesson, that sort of, you know, the larger creation of a story might follow on after your first session. So for a first session, you probably want something very short and containable that you can, you know, create and have the finished product. So we thought you'd probably look at something very short, like a poem about an animal. So the one that sprung to mind was Lewis Carroll's How Doth a Little Crocodile, or Spike Milligan's A Baby Sardine Saw Her First Submarine. And then you could use the scaffolding for that to, you know, you'd be looking at reading comprehension, confidence, how the student sort of understands the rhythm of language as well. And then when you have your scaffold, it would be, I guess, a bit like an extended gap fill exercise, depending on what you wanted to concentrate on, because you could do one that concentrated on the rhythm, so that they could get the see if they could put a line together that followed the rhythm of A Baby Sardine Saw Her First Submarine, da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum.
They even just get rhyming words in, you know, easily, and following the structure, copying the structure that's in the poem that they've just seen, is also good. And then, the create, the do it yourself, write your own version, your own animal poem using the structure you've just had. So you would have planned it out a lot.
More than we had the opportunity to do there.
Yeah. And then we thought at the end, when the published bit, if the 7-year-old wants to read their own poem out to their parents, or even back to you, read it out so they can actually hear themselves say what they've just written, because it's the kind of thing they'd find fun.
It's quite nice to have an end point, isn't it? You know, something that you're working towards, you know, that you know, reciting it to your parents or whatever it might be. That's always quite a nice thing to do, isn't it? And that's why the published part is so crucial, really. Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Victoria and Camilla. Lovely. Okay.
Great stuff. Okay, so this breakout room 5, this was Charlotte and Lucy. What did you guys come up with here?
So we decided to do 7-year-old English student, and we wanted to make them to build a story around an image. So we were going to show them an image and make them write basically a postcard on it, because we think that would kind of work to help show what they know from descriptions, vocab, kind of, etc., and putting just ideas into writing, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the publish element could be quite sweet, like sending, I mean, maybe not actually sending it, but like giving it as though it were a postcard, either to the parents or even like to the tutor, and then they could kind of read it out as if they were on the receiving end. And yeah, I think it'd be quite enjoyable, because like it has like associations of holidays or like adventure. So you could choose images that were quite kind of adventurous, or like that would fire up their imagination. So yeah, it could have some good
I quite like the idea of actually sending it, Lucy. I think that's quite nice, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
it's quite nice. Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah, true. They could send it to a friend, as Camilla just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friend or relative. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah. A lovely idea. Okay.
Good. So we've got 2 to go. Absolutely loving these ideas, guys. These are
Amazing, aren't
than we had anticipated. So this wonderful. The 6th room was Evie and Patrick.
I think that was me and Dan.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, was that you and Dan? Okay.
Yeah.
That was Ludo just checking that you were paying attention, Roberta.
Yeah. Okay. Got my eyes glued to the screen. Yeah, so in this, we decided that it might be fun to come up with a sort of diary entry, because in a way it's sort of slightly natural, because from what I remember, this was sort of the age where me and my friends were sort of interested in keeping a diary. So perhaps that's quite like a natural way of developing the voice, or like a form of fiction that they can maybe relate to on some level. And we thought that it could be a good model, something like another novel, like I think I Captured the Castle, or well, Anne Frank is a bit heavy maybe for a 7-year-old, but there are sort of like other models that you could take, that you could read with the child first, and then like to provide them with a scaffold, like you say, so that it doesn't seem too intimidating. So something like what they're supposed to do, an introductory paragraph describing time, context, then a main paragraph where they know they're supposed to develop certain thoughts and feelings, or maybe how they felt during the day, and then some sort of general conclusion. Yeah, so more or less that.
Yeah, some good ideas there. Yeah, some really powerful ideas. There's some great thinking going on. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, I think this is last but not least, Ludo, isn't it?
Yeah, if I've got the documents right, have Evie and Patrick, have you...
The reason it's probably not filled out is on mobile devices, so actually wrote it down.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I went old school, you know. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So Evie and I Evie said that she tutored English to 16-year-olds, which I thought was great, because I haven't written a grammatically correct sentence since then, so kind of used me as a guinea pig. So kind of our goal was of how to analyze a poem, and we thought the model would be quite nice to sort of making it personal, where the tutor themselves would bring a poem that they had analysed, because we were sort of discussing how with the analysis of the poem, they sort of mark it, or they discuss it upon how the reader feels within the poem. So we thought that having the tutor themselves come forward and say, this is the feelings that I felt from reading a poem, and sort of discussing it and saying, how the writer chose their methods to invoke certain feelings, and trying to sort of fit the entire poem into its sort of relative historical concepts, such as, the First or the Second World War. And we sort of thought the scaffolding could be kind of, reverse engineering that analysis of a poem, and saying, this is why I chose this. This is the feeling that I felt, and this was picked out by, or this was sort of worked on by this writer using this method, and it sort of fit into the historical concepts of this time. And then really sort of from that scaffolding, the student would be encouraged to go and create themselves. So they would sort of analyze a poem where they would be, picking out the feelings that they felt during the reading of a new sort of poem that they're just reading for the first time, perhaps. And then sort of, using the scaffold of the sort of tutor's model to, or using the scaffold from the tutor's model to sort of, help pick out the writer's methods and know what to spot for, and sort of thinking about generally the sort of historical concepts of the time, and trying to sort of fit the theme and the certain feelings within that context.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very comprehensive. Yeah, excellent. Okay, Julia, over to you.
Well, frankly, you all smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. And although I can't see everybody's screen for some reason, I'd love some thumbs to say if you are feeling that feeling of, I saw where I was going, I got where I was going, that feels great. I'm certainly feeling that right now. So yeah, excellent. Okay, brill. So Ludo and Adrian and I just saw the course work. We saw the plan come to life in your hands, and we saw all your subject specialism being broken down in a way that makes it useful as a tutor, because there's no point in having all that knowledge up there but not knowing how to break it down into a tutoring session that is useful and accessible to your student. So that's what happened just there. Ludo, could you share, please? I think it's slide 20. I think it's the last slide. So we set a goal that we would give you an easy to use, totally adaptable plan to ensure a successful first session with any student of any age and any subject. We modeled how that would work, which culminated in a breakout session where you discussed and analyzed a filled-in version of that. Then we scaffolded you by showing you each element of the goal, model, scaffold, create, publish structure. Then we gave you an opportunity to create your own, and then we published it by sharing it with each other. And I certainly felt that we amplified the value by publishing it, because you just saw 5 different, 6 I think, versions of this plan, which encourages you to go off and think about another 10 variations on those. So we've sort of created a sense for you, I hope, of what the next steps with this structure could be. I think it's also interesting that some of your sessions, you sort of slipped into teaching halfway through, which there's nothing wrong with. Of course there's not, that's sort of what you're there for. But it's interesting to see that that's how you would use this again and again with a student. So you wouldn't have to create and publish at the end of every session, but there's no harm in doing it on quite a regular basis, because it's enjoyable and gives that sense of achievement, especially for students who struggle with motivation. So just to wrap up, for those of you who don't know, the next cohort for the qualification for tutors starts on the 15th of July. We do have some spaces left on that course. We would love to see you or your friends there. Those of you who have now qualified should have received your certificates in your inbox by now. We've attached 2 things. We've attached your certificate, which has on it a unique verification number, because we want parents to be able to verify that you've done the course. It makes it much more meaningful for you. You'll see that there's also a CPD tick in there, because we're now CPD certified, which is super. And the last element is we've attached our logo, because our logo is not something for us to hold. It's actually something for you to hold. Our logo is designed to be a typed mark, to be a quality mark. And if you think about a tutoring platform like SuperProf, and you can search through lots and lots of different tutors there, as a parent, I'm going to choose the tutor who's got the qualified tutor logo on it, even before I know what it means. You've immediately set yourself apart by showing that you've taken the time to do a qualification in tutoring. So our logo is actually designed to be an idea that spreads. And the more prevalent it becomes, the more as a movement we're going to be raising the bar in tutoring, which is what we're really here to do. Because we really want to serve our students as well as possible, we want to train, and we want to encourage others to train. So I need to urge you to please use that quality mark. Another fantastic thing we would love you to do would be to share the certificate on your social media platforms. The more you do that, the more idea spreads, the more people we're able to train, the more students benefit. Now, we have been spending the last 2 weeks speaking to people who are organizing a national tutoring program. And we have become very clear that we are not offering the bog standard training. We are offering transformational training. And that's a process that involves collaboration and culture and community. And we can only do that with you. So we will find ways to create more conversations for you. We will start offering specialist courses in your subject, in your phases, or specialist in SEN or in mental health and well-being. Find ways to help you to continue to level up, because being qualified is not an endpoint. Really, our question is, how qualified are you? And you'll have noticed in our introductory chat, we are all enthusiastic students here. And that's what we're trying to teach our students to be. We're trying to inspire lifelong learners, and the best way to do that is to model it. So thank you so much for the quality of your engagement. It blows our minds. It encourages us very much. We barely sleep. We're developing this so quickly. And we would love to see those of you who haven't done the qualification yet, on with the 15th. We've got a massive cohort of great people joining, and we look forward to sharing the conversation with you in the future. Thank you so very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. You guys are the best.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Cheers, thanks.
you. See you soon, Camilla.
Bye.
Thanks. It was lovely to see you, Charlotte. Thanks, Rebecca. See you soon, Evie. Thanks, Claire. See you, Paddy. Well done for making it back every time.